Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies, offering national LTE coverage and no subscription ever. Perfect for instant contact with an aging parent. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get an extra 60% off, free UPS shipping, and add code radio for an extra 5% off.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A rough night for both of LA's baseball teams. The Dodgers lost their fifth straight game. They went down 3-1 at Milwaukee. Milwaukee rookie pitcher Jacob Misiorowski had 12 strikeouts in 6 innings. The Angels were routed at home 13-1 by Texas. The Lakers introduced new center DeAndre Ayton Tuesday at a press conference. Ayton, the number 1 pick in the 2018 NBA draft, signed with the Lakers 2 weeks ago as a free agent. The 26-year-old Ayton has career averages of 16.4 points, 10.5 rebounds, and a 59% shooting percentage. The men's basketball teams at Hampton and North Carolina A&T were selected to play in the 2026 NBA HBCU Classic during All-Star Weekend. The NBA All-Star Game is February 15th at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time, whenever news breaks, while we're on the air. It's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. And I thank you, thank you.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, that's the Whispers, and we're delighted to have you with us in this hour of our program. On the B side of this hour, as we continue squeezing this 80-pound show into this 40-pound bag, they are working me today, 2 conversations every hour. And in this hour, 2 conversations. On the B side, award-winning historian and documentary filmmaker Laurence Rees on what his iconic series, The Nazis, a warning from history, can still teach us in this moment about the possible and dangerous road ahead. The series getting a fresh run as we speak on the BBC. But we commenced this hour in conversation with Erica Smiley, no relation that I know of the struggle to build power for working people while addressing issues of inequality and poverty. Erica is the executive director of Jobs with Justice, and again, I'm pleased to have her on this program. Erica, I said no relation that I know of. You know something I don't know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I might know a little bit, but you don't want to dig too deep into the family tree of Black Americans. It's more of a burning bush than a stately oak. You know what I mean?
I like that. A burning bush more than a stately oak. Very nicely said. But I'm delighted to have you on. Anybody with the last name Smiley is welcome here. I shouldn't say anybody. I don't know all the Smileys in the world, but you're certainly welcome here. And I'm glad to have you on. Let me just start by saying how much I appreciate your work and witness in this particular area. I was just talking to Bishop Barber early this morning, as a matter of fact. And he's one of those voices that I respect out on the front lines raised in this issue of poverty. This audience knows I'm a King student. I regard Dr. King as the greatest American this country has ever produced, as far as I'm concerned. That's my view of it, at least. But whenever I think of your work, Erica, and Jobs with Justice, I go back, speaking of King, to that March on Washington, because we call it the March on Washington. We never call it by its full title. You know where I'm going with this. But link the work that you're doing in real time to what that march was really all about back in 1963.
Well, look, when we think about democracy, a lot of people just think about the act of voting. But in fact, like you say, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, I mean, the idea of democracy has many prongs, and we tend to anchor our work when we think about the Great Reconstruction period in the U.S., which was kind of the last period historically where the entire country was pointed in the direction of trying to build a multiracial democracy, even using those terms. And as imperfect as it was, when you look at the first constitutional amendment of that period, it was a labor amendment. The abolish of slavery and forced labor. The 14th Amendment started to define citizenship. The 15th started to define who could vote and suffrage. And so, our movements, including the March on Washington, have been trying to actualize that vision for democracy over the last 150 plus years. And our opposition have all been trying to roll it back. And so at Jobs with Justice, we just see ourselves not simply as a labor organization or a workers' rights organization, but as a democracy organization operating in that economic lane.
Talk to me, Erica, about workers' rights or the lack thereof in a moment such as this. And I asked that question against the backdrop of what you know and what many of my audience already know. We saw the news in the last 24, 36 hours that the Supreme Court of the United States, their term is now ended. Basically, they're on summer recess, but they have given Donald Trump more runway. He's just running the table right now. They're giving him all the leeway he needs to indeed mass fire these government workers. This case has been going back and forth in the federal courts, whether or not he does in fact have the power without Congress's approval to fire all these government workers. And the Supreme Court just opened the door and said for the moment he can do what he wants to do. So talk to me about how you even frame a conversation around workers' rights when the Supreme Court of the United States has given the president the right to just fire people from the federal government, certainly en masse.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the latest in the attacks on our democracy, and the latest in the Supreme Court's efforts to roll back what we won during Reconstruction, particularly with the 14th and 15th Amendments. But when we think about the federal workers being terminated, I mean, one of the things we have to put in context is that the public sector and federal work in particular has been a key pathway to economic sustainability for many Black Americans, not solely, but it has been something in the last half century that has allowed for many of our families, mine in particular, to sustain themselves. And so the implications of this are going to be devastating, not only for those of us who depend on the government for basic services, even things like, who's inspecting our meat, who's making sure our medications are safe and valid. But it's also going to impact some of the communities in and around D.C., Maryland, one of the historically most wealthiest counties for Black people to live. It's been in PG County, Maryland. That's going to be implicated by this. And so it's certainly, I think one of the things that's important for us to see in this moment, and the Supreme Court is continuing to catalyze it, is that we are essentially in a war for democracy. And one of the things we like to remind people is that that war is experiencing some of his most brutal battles on the shop floor.
Yeah. I want to step outside of government for a second. I may go back there in a moment, but I want to just ask right quick how Black workers challenge corporate power. It's one thing. I had the president of the big union for federal employees on this program, I guess a week or so ago. But stepping outside of the federal government, outside of the public sector, rather, to the private sector, how do Black workers challenge corporate power right about now?
Well, I'll tell you this one quote that I got from what I'll now consider as a friend of mine, and she's a woman who's leading the United Auto Workers down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Her name's Renee Berry, and she said, they need us to make the cars no matter who's in the White House. And so this idea, she's in Tennessee, and this is actually really important because the majority of Black people in the United States live in the U.S. South. According to the last U.S. Census, the GDP of 6 of the former Confederate states in the South contribute more to the U.S. economy than the entire Northeast, including New York. And the epicenter of a lot of manufacturing and new investments, both from within the country as well as from overseas, has been developed in the South, particularly in states like South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. And so when we think about Black people challenging corporate power, we have to understand that the political economy of the Southern region, where the majority of Black people are, is actually where the fight for democracy is raging. That it's yet again, we're back in the South. We often joke around, say, oh, as goes the South, so goes the nation.
Yeah.
Those are more than just words. And I think Dr. King and many others knew that towards their later campaigns as well.
Her name is Erica Smiley. She's Executive Director of Jobs with Justice. She's got more answers. I've got more questions when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Paul's new drone startup just lost its most genius computer scientist.
We just lost our best genius to some new genius who's got a genius new idea. I'm going to have to find a new genius. Or two half geniuses and fast.
He needs a computer scientist that can keep his startup from falling down.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
No one wants to leave behind stress for their family. That's why a trust or a will is so important. Without one, your assets might go to the wrong people or leave out loved ones. Also, probate is long, expensive, and often avoidable with a revocable trust. Trustandwill.com makes it simple to create a personalized estate plan. A trust or will provides clarity and peace of mind. Get 20% off on your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/radio.
Career changers, including veterans and active duty service members. Your transition starts here. Go from GI to IT in a matter of months. Become a certified cyber warrior with training at My Computer Career. Cybersecurity specialists are in high demand, offering IT pros great opportunities and a rewarding lifestyle while protecting our people, liberty, and treasured institutions from cyber threats. Deploy your career in IT today. Learn more at mycomputercareer.edu/CWP. SkillBridge and other VA benefits are available to those who qualify.
An official message from Medicare.
I turned 65 this year. I knew it was time to figure out Medicare, and I had questions, like when to enroll and how to enroll. So I went straight to the official source, Medicare.gov, to get the facts about Medicare. I found answers to all my questions, and I'm ready to get started. And so can you. Just go to Medicare.gov to get the real facts about Medicare.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated the best hearing aids of 2025 by Forbes Health, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, starting at just $98 a pair.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aid.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 1 million happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in,
but we're okay with that.
You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Erica Smiley. So it's Smiley and Smiley here for a few more minutes. Erica Smiley and Tavis Smiley. I'm this a lowly talk show host. She's the executive director of Jobs with Justice, and I'm honored to have her on this program for a few more minutes here. I noted earlier this year, Erica, that Clark Atlanta launched a labor institute to develop black strategists for a renewed union movement, which leads me to ask how do you make labor organizing, specific for black folk, but for all of us, how do you make labor organizing central to revitalizing the democracy? Because I believe, as Dr. King did, that there's an inextricable link between those two things.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of my colleagues, Big Mike, everyone calls him Big Mike. He's in Bessemer, Alabama. He works at Amazon, or at least he used to. And when they were trying to unionize the facility there and discovered that as one of the predominantly black facilities in the company's footprint, that they were experiencing disproportionate surveillance, he told his coworkers, this is our Black Lives Matter movement right here. There's a reason that unions have traditionally been called schools of democracy. It's one of the few places where you've got people from different backgrounds and ideas and neighborhoods coming together to negotiate around a similar set of issues and standards in their workplace, and to sometimes come up against the same opposition in terms of their employer. And, when you think of a union contract, Tavis, we're really just talking about a policy for a workplace that's democratically voted on and democratically enforced.
Yep. No naivete in asking this question, but why do you think there are so many people still who are holding the line, refusing to allow their workers to unionize? I ain't calling no names, Jeff Bezos.
I mean, I think, and today more than, say, in the past couple of decades, I think those who are opposed to democracy are so clear and maybe even less abashed about the fact that the majority making decisions is a real threat to them. It's certainly a real threat to their pocketbook for many folks. I mean, I think Governor McMaster in South Carolina called unions the most clear and present danger. He's making a lot of money, as are his supporters, on the rise of the electric vehicle industry boom in his state. So the idea that the workforce, a good portion of which is African American, would want to be able to take some of that power away from him is a real threat.
Yep. I was reading a bunch of pieces last night, Erica, in preparation for our conversation today. And I was reading a piece last night that was making the argument that, an op-ed piece, in fact, making the argument that despite Elon Musk's departure from the government, that Trump's war against unions and workers will continue. That headline or that article sort of jumped out at me because I wonder whether or not you would describe what Donald Trump is doing vis-a-vis unions and workers as a war against them.
Oh, yes, against unions and workers and against democracy. I think, again, if we think of everyday people organized into blocks, we can think of them organized into blocks of voters, and we can think of them organized into blocks of workers, both of which are trying to galvanize the majority into some form of decision making for our society that we all live in. And so, and when I say the fight for democracy is on the shop floor, I'm being very specific. I mean, when the Trump administration deported Kilmar Garcia, I mean, out of Maryland, he's a sheet metal worker. David Huerta out of the Service Employees International Union in Los Angeles. Jennifer is a worker in Amazon in New York, who's been refused consistently access to pregnancy accommodation. And she's one of 150 workers that's recently come forward to say that they've experienced or been threatened to experience miscarriage because the company won't obey the law. And so if we have these laws in place for pregnancy fairness or Warehouse Worker Protection Act in New York, and the administration is certainly not enforcing it through their Department of Labor or other agencies, and the companies are not going to enforce it through their own policies, then it actually undermines not only everyday people's lives and deaths in some instances, but also undermines our ability to fight for the ability to have a seat at the table in making these decisions.
So I sit in this seat every day for 3 hours and do my best to wrestle with subjects and topics. Say it again. I'm sorry. Say that again.
You got to stretch those legs, Tavis.
Oh yeah. Oh, trust me. During the breaks, I get up and walk around a little bit. But 3 hours every day, I sit here, and my point is that I'm trying to get this audience of listeners across the country to wrestle with topics and issues and subjects that aren't always sexy, but that require that require some real conversation around them and about them, so that we can, again, to your point, save this democracy, which I think is on the precipice of failure. And so some of these topics aren't easy or sexy, like this conversation we're having right now about workers' rights. Even as everybody listening to me right now is working somewhere, at least many of the listeners are, most of them are. I say that only because I'm curious as to your take. I wrestle with this myself all the time. How do I phrase this? How do we go about shaping and framing a public conversation about workers' rights and the economy. What's your sense of how we best shape and frame that conversation in a moment like this? Does that make sense?
It does. And you kind of named one of the key elements, which is that the overwhelming majority of us spend the bulk of our time at work. And so it's not a foreign idea that's over there. I mean, I feel like our opposition often likes to say, oh, these big, labor and, try to make it seem like they're outsiders coming in. And yet all of us have the experience of a manager or a boss or whoever at work. I mean, this is why Elon Musk's efforts with with government efficiency or whatever they call DOGE was so upsetting to people across political lines. Is because they've all seen bad bosses come in and without any consideration of what works for the majority of the people in a given company or workplace, just try to wipe it clean in this really negative way. In fact, one of the things we have that we're interested in testing with a lot of folks is this idea that, especially after the passage of this big terrible budget, this idea of a Tesla tax or something where these large low-wage corporations are actually forced to pay into covering some of the services that so many people and some of the jobs that so many people are going to lose in this particular moment. And so there are lots of different ways that we could talk about it to make it very clear who is hurting us in this moment, whether it's someone far away like Elon Musk or someone right at your own workplace.
I love the work that you all do at Jobs with Justice around research and policy advocacy and certainly grassroots action, mobilization. I love all of that. And yet I wonder sometimes, particularly in a moment like this, whether or not the labor movement is on life support. You look up all the time, you see these articles about how fractured and how delicate the labor movement is in this country. Of course, on the other hand, you see these victories that labor has had over the last few years. I think are pretty striking. UAW across the board, Sean Fain and others across the board in all kinds of industries. We see a number of successes we can point to, and yet I think this narrative persists for some reason, Erica, that labor in this country is in fact on life support. How about you push back or respond to that?
Well, I just want to distinguish between organized labor and some of the institutions that are in place, some of which are in fact losing membership, and the labor movement, which consists of many of those institutions as well as others who aren't necessarily considered unions, or workers who are still actively organizing for a union but wouldn't necessarily show up in the Bureau of Labor Statistics format, right? And so even before the National Labor Relations Act and the New Deal, working people were organizing unions or at least trying to stand up and have democratic decision-making at work. And so the movement of working people trying to have a democratic say in their economic lives is not only alive and well, it is active, it is on fire. We've seen the most strikes, the most direct action, the most walkouts probably in the last decade than we've seen in the last 50 years. Non-traditional worker organizations, unions, there's a reason our opposition tries to call all of us unions, because they want to try to limit institutionally what we can do in the world in fighting for democracy, as opposed to having a whatever sticks, whatever works kind of mentality. But our ancestors have been doing this far before the practices that unions use today was in place. And so the idea that we can win collective bargaining, a democratic seat at the table in our workplaces is actually very strong, even if the formal membership of a traditional union is going down.
I think there's a link, or certainly ought to be to my mind, between working people organizing and working people being civically engaged. They're not necessarily the same things, but I think that, again, if you're going to be engaged as a working person in organizing, you have to also be civically engaged. My job every day is to attempt to do my best to raise the level of civic engagement, to raise the level of civic understanding, to raise our civic IQ. That's what I'm trying to do every day on this program. Talk to me, though, about that link as you see it between working people organizing and working people being civically engaged in a moment right now, for example, where many of us are just holding our nose, closing our eyes, turning a blind ear to what's happening in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question because The irony is that there'll be one show we'll be talking about everyday people as voters, and on the next show we'll be talking about everyday people as workers, and they're the same people. They're the exact same people trying to insert themselves and insert the majorities that they're a part of into decision making, whether that's in our communities and civic environments or at our work sites. And so there are pretty good documentation and data research showing that when people are active in organizing a union or active in any kind of workplace effort, that they tend to be activated and more civically engaged. We saw that in 2018 with the teachers unions in West Virginia when they, walked out. It wasn't even technically a legal strike. It was a walkout over their issues of healthcare and privacy and wages. And after that, we were talking to some of the teachers, one of the presidents in Morganton, in Marion County, where they said, all of a sudden they were getting hundreds of people coming to the meetings. They wanted to talk not just about what they had won, but also talk through, what was happening in the next election and how they needed to engage, that people get activated. And so the idea of organizing and supporting people in organizing in their workplaces or in their communities, particularly in the southern region where the majority of Black people still are, is a big threat to those who are worried about the majority ruling, not just in their pockets in terms of economic lives, but also in terms of the state legislatures, which, being a North Carolina native, I don't know if you know anything about my state, but it's only the lowest union membership or second lowest union membership, but also our state legislature has never required a majority to rule. And so that would be a big threat to them. I spent a lot of time in North Carolina over the course of my career. I mentioned William Barber earlier. As you know, he was in North Carolina for many years, and still spends a lot of time in that particular state. And it was the senator from North Carolina, Republican Tom Tillis, who voted against this big ugly bill, and then announced he wasn't going to run again because certainly Trump was going to primary him had Tom Tillis decided to run for re-election in North Carolina. I digress on that now. I mentioned Dr. King earlier, and King famously said, as you know, Erica Smiley, that the time is always ripe to do what is right. The time is always ripe to do what is right. It seems to me that the time is ripe right now, R-I-P-E, to do what's right for working families. I mentioned, speaking of this big ugly bill, Republicans were slick enough to put the real pain after the midterms. The tax cuts kick in immediately, but the real pain that everyday people are going to feel won't really happen until after the midterms. But at some point, these working families are going to feel the brunt. They're going to bear the burden of these cuts to make room for the cuts to social programs, to make room for these tax cuts for the rich and the lucky. My point is that it seems like a really good time to be organizing specifically around the notion, the issue of working families. To that, you say what? Whether I think it's a good time or not, I've already been organized into campaigns by everyday people who are taking a stand. I mean, my parents in Greensboro were the first to tell me in February that we weren't going to Target anymore, which, I won't talk about the sacrifice to my good and gather snacks, but I haven't been. And, the boycott has kept their foot traffic down for many months now. And now workers at the company are trying to get involved and discuss not only DEI, but their own conditions. And so, in a way, whether we think it's the time or not, everyday people are beginning to organize themselves. And it may not have been the fight I would have designed, but it's the fight that we have. And you better believe I'm going to be right there with them. No, you fight the fight you have, and when we fight, we win, as somebody once said. Erica Smiley is the Executive Director of Jobs with Justice. Pleased to have had her on this program to talk about how, in fact, we lead the fight for workers' rights and an economy that benefits everybody, particularly and especially at a moment like this. Erica, thank you for your work and witness. Good to have you on this program. All the best to you. Hey, thanks, Tavis. Glad to be here. Thank you for your time. We're working our way through this program, halfway through, squeezing this 80-pound show into a 40-pound bag. We'll see what the next 90 minutes brings us when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward?
Because he's not going back.
And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. The Philadelphia City worker strike is over. Union leaders and the city agreed to a 9% raise over 3 years. Black District Council 33 President Greg Bulwer had a message for workers.
The union stood up and fought for you, and we did the best we could with the circumstances we had in front of us.
City services like trash and water are resuming as workers return today. Queens Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani made history in New York City's mayoral primary, earning over 565,000 votes, the most ever. He beat Andrew Cuomo by 13 points and called the win a mandate for progressive change, including rent freezes and free transit. And reality TV star and dentist Dr. Heavenly Kimes is running for Georgia's House District 93. Known from Married to Medicine, she's focused on healthcare, education, and police reform. She launched her campaign July 8th at the state capitol. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies offering national LTE coverage and no subscription ever. Perfect for instant contact with an aging parent. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get an extra 60% off, free UPS shipping, and add code RADIO for an extra 5% off.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A rough night for both of LA's baseball teams. The Dodgers lost their 5th straight game. They went down 3-1 at Milwaukee. Milwaukee rookie pitcher Jacob Mizorowski had 12 strikeouts in 6 innings. The Angels were routed at home 13-1 by Texas. The Lakers introduced new center DeAndre Ayton Tuesday at a press conference. Ayton, the number 1 pick in the 2018 NBA draft, signed with the Lakers 2 weeks ago as a free agent. The 26-year-old Ayton has career averages of 16.4 points, 10.5 rebounds, and a 59% shooting percentage. The men's basketball teams at Hampton and North Carolina A&T were selected to play in the 2026 NBA HBCU Classic during All-Star Weekend. The NBA All-Star Game is February 15th at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Hey man, hey, what's up? What's that station you listening to? Oh man, you don't know? That's Talk Radio, KBLA 1580 AM. Check it out. KBLA AM. Progressive.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're celebrating our 4th anniversary, and this track right here is the gift one of our devoted listeners presented to us.
Where you get some information, get a true education. Just to know, ooh, yeah.
How cool is that? Having a member of our KBLA delegation write us a song. Stop it! Our listeners love us and there ain't nothing we can do about it. Wouldn't want to. Thanks to Cardell and everybody else for turning on KBLA Talk 1580. We love you right black.
Freedom is an endless meeting, so let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Delighted to have you with us on the backside of this hour. As promised now, a conversation with award-winning historian and documentary filmmaker Laurence Rees on what his iconic series, The Nazis, a warning from history, can still teach us about the possible and dangerous road ahead. The series is getting a fresh run right now on Prime. Check it out when you can. It's called, again, The Nazis, a warning from history. Laurence, good to have you on the program, sir. How are you today?
I'm great, Tavis. Thanks very much for having me.
It's good to have you on. Let me just start with this. I want to frame this conversation properly. So I was thinking last night, of course, watching your brilliant work once again, and got up this morning and talked to my one of my producers before I came on the air today, and I was saying that, and you'll appreciate this. This is dangerous territory. And what I mean by dangerous territory is not necessarily the lessons we can learn from your iconic series. We'll talk about that in a second. But dangerous territory to even be having this conversation. As you well know, there are all kinds of media institutions in this country that are bending the knee. They're writing fat checks to Donald Trump. ABC sending him millions, and CBS recently sending him millions, and the list goes on and on and on. And they're going after other media outlets. So a lot of media types are bending the knee in this country, in part because they want to stay out of harm's way when it comes to Donald Trump. And yet on this program, heard across the country, there's Donald Trump commentary every day, as it was just moments ago. There always is Donald Trump commentary on this program, but you step into a different sort of space when you start talking about what we can learn from the Nazis, about how dangerous this moment is, and what it potentially, this authoritarianism potentially portends for the future. That's a dangerous space to be in. So I'm wondering whether or not Donald Trump's going to come after you and me in the coming days just for having this conversation.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I did that series 30 years ago, and I just had a book out a couple of months ago. Earlier in Britain, it did very well here in Britain. It's just come out in America, and it's called the Nazi Mind, 12 Warnings from History, which is much more specific than the series. And I wrote that book really because I felt the original kind of warning, such as it was in the series, was very, very generalized. It was based, I was reading a German philosopher called Karl Jaspers, and he said, that which has happened is a warning. To forget it is guilt. It must be continually remembered. So it's very, very general. Mm-hmm. But the latest book, I tried to be much more specific about absolute things that we should look out for. Although crucially, what I didn't do was link it to specific regimes in the world. And I didn't do that for two reasons. One was because you know your country much better than me. And it's being published, this book, in Finland, in Vietnam, all over the world. And in each country, people are looking at it and getting the warnings for themselves. So the best person placed to judge the value of the series, the original series, and the book is you, because you know what's happening there in a way I don't. But certainly, one of the biggest warnings in the series and also the book is the immense, people do not understand the immense fragility of democratic institutions. And that's true in my country, but I think in your country, people now begin to and do understand it because of what's happened.
Yeah, I'm glad you framed it that way, in part because it's not just this country. Around the world, we see this Donald Trump type authoritarianism, if I can say it, taking hold. Yeah. So again, it's not just us. What's happening in the global community, as it were, that's allowing the rise of these far-right leaders again in spots all around the map?
Well, I can certainly talk to what we can take and what happened in Germany, and I think it's relevant in this way. The first is, what you got to understand about the Nazis is they thrived on conspiracy theories. They loved conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories were central to them. And a lot of their conspiracy theories were about the fact that they just couldn't face the real reason Germany lost the First World War, which is they shouldn't have got into it and fought it as they did. So they started looking for scapegoats, people to blame, like the particularly Jews. And so this was kind of completely fantasy land that they were in, but it was very, very valuable to them, these conspiracy theories that they actually pushed forward. There was then an increase in them and us rhetoric because of that. So you're either in the group or you're out of the group. And it's not a question of what you're like as an individual. That doesn't matter. It's like you in the group or you out of the group. And the out group, they're there to be persecuted. And I think that's very important. And then in terms of what's happening that we can even take more directly, there was a really strong sense that there was a failure of normal democracy to deal with problems ordinary people had. In 1928, Hitler's been around forever, right? He gets 2.8, a long time. He gets 2.8% of the vote. 5 years later, 1933, he's Chancellor of Germany, at the head of the biggest party in Germany. What changes? What changes? A lot of things. Two things, crucially: terrible economic depression, and then a failure of democracy because of the system to actually deal with it. And so people turned, knowing what they were turning to, because they thought the system's bust. We need a whole new look.
We're talking with, I'll just pause here for a second. I was making a note on what Laurence just said, which I want to regurgitate or share with you again in case you weren't writing as fast as I was. But we're talking about the Nazis in case you've just tuned in, and a warning from history, what it is that what the Nazis did. Can teach us in this moment about the dangerous road ahead, potentially. And you just heard Laurence Rees lay out three things that allowed what happened in Germany to happen. In no particular order. Number one, they were fond of conspiracy theories. Sound familiar? Number two, there was a lot of them versus us rhetoric. Them versus us rhetoric. Sound familiar? And thirdly, this notion that was being advanced that democratic institutions were failing in their ability to deal with the problems that everyday people have to navigate. Sound familiar? I said a moment ago, this is the space where you get in trouble, trying to make comparisons to that era and this particular era. But as I said, it's not just in this country. Around the world, we see authoritarianism rising. I guess the question I want to ask now, having said all that, Laurence, is we talked a moment ago about the media in this country bending the knee, but it's not just the media, it's also our court system. The Supreme Court continues to get Donald Trump's back. They continue to open doors for him, open lanes for him. The federal judiciary is sort of schizophrenic. One court will say this, another will say this, but every time he gets in trouble, he appeals to the Supreme Court. Of course, he appointed many of those members in this 63 conservative majority. He appeals to our Supreme Court, and they rescue him. They come to his defense. What's the parallel for that with regard to the Nazis and the court system, the legal system sort of falling apart or acquiescing, as it were?
The two things that Hitler and the Nazis sought to do pretty much the day they came in, two things. And I think they're two things that authoritarian leaders in past and all over the world do. This is not one in the world. These are very two common factors. And the two things that Hitler did immediately was immediately shut down a free press. That was over straight away. and he put a guy called Joseph Goebbels, who was a brilliant propagandist, in charge of essentially dictating. The journalists would come in to the propaganda office, and they would get stories dictated to them by the officials there. Mm-hmm. And no other media was possible. Vital for these people to control the media. Absolutely crucial. They can't allow a different voice. And one of the things I was terrified of is jokes, people making fun of them. Mm-hmm. So they shut. That's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to see happen with this kind of leader, is the immediate shutting down of any kind of free journalism and free speech.
Hold that second point. He said there were two things that Hitler did immediately. The first was to shoot down a free press. You heard that point, right? He did not like people making jokes, making fun of him, fun of them. Sound familiar? Donald Trump can do anything, but he can't take a joke. He cannot take a joke. He does not like folk making fun of him. So the first thing Hitler did was to shoot down the free press. What's the second thing? We'll talk about that part when we come forward with Laurence Rees on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
BET and PBS, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? Uh-huh. This is Tavis Smiley.
What about you? Yeah. At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time, whenever news breaks, while we're on the air. It's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. Thank you, thank you.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in.
But we're okay with that.
You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
Our guest right now is award-winning historian and documentary filmmaker Laurence Rees, who 30 years ago did an iconic series called The Nazis, A Warning from History, now getting a fresh run on Prime. I wonder why they're running it on Prime right now. Somebody understands that there are parallels between then and now, hence it running again on Prime. Check it out as you will. It's called The Nazis, A Warning from History. More recently, he has published a new book called The Nazi Mind, 12 Warnings from History. And I'm delighted to have him on this program. You were just saying a moment ago, my time is getting tight on me, but you were saying a moment ago, Laurence Rees, that there were two things that Hitler immediately did when he came to power. He did not like folk offering jokes and making fun of him and his ilk. So he shot down a free press. That's the first thing he did. What was the second thing you were about to say, Laurence?
The second thing he did was to attack the judges and ensure that all the judges were sympathetic to him. And what's interesting about that, I mean, so total reconstruction of the rule of law. And what's interesting about that is what you see in a number of people who want to be dictators all around the world. I'm not singling out America here, all around the world. And what you see is that if you've been elected, what you try and do is to alter the appointments procedure for judges. You see that happening quite a lot in countries now, where they've got a wannabe authoritarian who's been elected by some kind of democratic means, is you alter the appointment procedure for judges, and then you kind of get into forced retirement of judges who you think are not sympathetic to you. And you ally that because if you now control the press, so you're leaning on the press because they're terrified of legal action against them, what you do then is you get the press to attack the particular judges who are sympathetic to carrying on with the rule of law. So those two prongs, Hitler was able to do this in a way that someone who isn't, Hitler was elected to be an authoritarian. People knew when they elected him, that was the end of democracy. That's one of the incredible things about the story. But you see those two-prong attacks, attack on the rule of law, destruction of the rule of law, and the destruction of a free press are the absolute two-pronged, like viper attack that comes really, really first thing.
As I mentioned, Donald Trump can't take a joke. He doesn't like people making fun of him. That taco reference just got all under his skin. You all recall a few weeks ago when that reporter had the nerve in that press conference to ask him about taco. He said, "Taco, I haven't heard of this." And the reporter said, "Yeah, everybody's calling you taco. What do you mean?" Trump always chickens out. You could see the blood in his eyes when they called him a taco. This media, member of the media, referred to him as a taco in his question. Donald Trump couldn't handle that. But we know we can't take a joke. But here's my question, though. Whether or not every time we see someone come to power and they move to shoot down the press and then they start attacking judges, I mean, people don't do this every single day, but is there any other way to read this moment, even though we see Donald Trump doing those two things, messing with the press, attacking judges, making them sympathetic to his cause? Is there any other way to read this particular moment? That's the question for Laurence Rees when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. The Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind: to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my two sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-687-7979. That's 800-687-7979. 800-687-7979.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
And the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley and Laurence Rees, award-winning noted historian. Again, his series that came out some decades ago, The Nazis, A Warning from History, is getting a fresh run right now on Prime. His book, just out weeks ago, is called The Nazi Mind, 12 Warnings from History, and we're tapping into that part right there, the 12 warnings from history that we ought to be keeping our eyes on. In case you've just tuned in, we know that what allowed what happened in Germany to happen, one, they were advancing conspiracy theories. Two, this rhetoric of them versus us started popping off. And three, they were advancing this notion that the democratic institutions were failing in their ability to respond to address the needs of everyday people and the problems they were facing. As I said earlier, does any of that sound familiar? Hitler comes to rise. He does two things. He doesn't like jokes, doesn't like being made fun of. He shoots down a free press. Sound familiar? Then he starts attacking the judges. Sound familiar? I digress on all of that. My question a moment ago, Laurence Rees, my time is getting tight, was whether or not there's any other way to read. And again, I'm not making a comparison between Trump and Hitler. I want to be clear about that. My question is whether or not when a leader, an authoritarian leader comes to power, and he does those two things, he tries to shut down or intimidate a free press, and he does in fact start attacking judges, the judiciary, is there any other way to read that kind of behavior?
Well, you're right. I mean, I'm a historian, not a kind of politician. So I mean, very hard for me to say. All I can say is I can't, as just an ordinary thinking person, it's very hard to think of why you would do that if you're looking to preserve a democratic institution. But I thought, prediction-wise, I'm a total wash because 18 months before the insurrection, I'm there with my wife. We're going around the Capitol building in Washington on a tour. I'm looking at the Bill of Rights. I'm looking at the Constitution in the museum nearby. And I'm going, this place is the triumph of democracy, the beacon of the Enlightenment. We must so look up to this place. It's so stable as a democracy. 18 months later, there's a mob in the Capitol shouting, hang the vice president. I could never have thought that. I couldn't think that in a million years would happen. So I would say you've got a constitution that preserves free speech. It's right there. But who knows? I don't know. I mean, look what happened with as I say, with when I'm going around the Capitol building just before the insurrection.
Yep. Since you are outside of this country, and I say all the time, certainly in the summertime, when people get a break for holiday and vacation, it's always good. And I've done this for most of my career as often as I can. Some years it doesn't work out, but I always try to get out of the country during the summertime or at some point during the year because I believe that you can see America best and better from the outside than you can from the inside. It's kind of like being on the float in the parade. When you're on the float, you can't see nothing. You got to get off the float to look at the parade that's going past you. So it's better to get out of this country every so often to look at America from the outside. I've got 60 seconds left. I'll give it to you, given the point you've just made in 60 seconds. How does America look today from the outside, Laurence Rees? Laurence,
well, yeah. I think, if you look at what's happening, if you look at how, generally speaking, Europeans look at it, right. I would just say there's one word, which is bemused.
Wow.
Bemused.
Wow.
It makes no sense to people here that this could happen.
Yep.
And so therefore we don't understand it anymore.
Yep.
I mean, they used to say Americans we're separate. We have a common language, but it's now a feeling that we may speak the same language.
Culturally and politically, we're speaking a different language.
Yeah. That may be the word of the day, bemuse. And by the way, for those Scrabble players like myself, it's a good Scrabble word too, bemuse. Get some good points off of that one. But our bemused word is the word of the day. The book is called The Nazi Mind, 12 Warnings from History. The series, now getting a fresh run on Prime, is called The Nazis, A Warning from History. Both the documentary and the book are the creative expressions of the award-winning historian Laurence Rees, who I've been honored to have had on this program for these last 30 minutes. Thank you for your time, sir. All the best to you. Good to have you on the program.
Thanks so much, Tavis. Appreciate it.
More of Tavis, Smiley, when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. The Philadelphia City Worker Strike is over. Union leaders and the city agreed to a 9% raise over 3 years. Black District Council 33 President Greg Boulware had a message for workers.